Morning to you and welcome. Just 2 weeks ago, we gathered in a meeting very similar to this one. But then we were beginning our journey of making moonshots. But what a difference that just 2 weeks can make. Today, after 5 sessions of thinking big and working together, we can now present those moonshots to you. My name is Golda Lee Bruce, and I am a development storyteller in the Caribbean Country Department of the IDB, and I have the honor of taking you through this morning's very exciting proceedings. Pivot is a movement of ideas fueled by future makers. It is the result of a partnership among the Inter-American Development Bank, the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator, Singularity University, and the Destination Experience. Without further ado, I welcome Kirk Anthony Hamilton to welcome you. Kirk Anthony is an architectural designer turned entrepreneur, investor, community curator, and co-founder of the Infinity Partnership Inc., Tech Beach Retreat, and the Destination Experience. He is on a mission to build a new global business ecosystem for the Caribbean, with platforms designed to drive investment, technology, influence, and big media to the region, with an aim to catalyze innovation, new enterprise, and wealth creation opportunities. Welcome, Kirk Anthony.
Thank you, Golda. Good morning, everyone. I'm truly honored. I can go ahead, Golda? Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm truly honored by the opportunity to welcome you all to the final day of Pivot. As you would have seen, it's been an exciting 2 weeks of brainstorming and ideation, exploring beyond the norm. I'd like to extend a big thank you and round of applause to each of you for your participation and the ultimate success of the first ever Pivot. And I'm calling that into being as we enter into the last day. I'd also like us to show our love and appreciation for the IDB for putting this together in collaboration with Singularity University and the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. My company, the Destination Experience, was a proud partner of the engagement. We've been here from the beginning, and I think it's important to note that Pivot was actually conceived prior to the pandemic as a call to action for the region to really start to explore these exponential and transformative ideas. On the first day of meetings, the moderator for my group, Nick from Singularity University, started off by asking us if we've ever heard of moonshots before being invited into Pivot. Of course, a number of people said they hadn't. And he responded by saying, "Be prepared for me to blow your mind." He then pulled back and said, "Actually, allow me to free your mind." I think for me, this best summed up what this experience is supposed to be all about. Pivot was really conceived to create a safe space where we can share the ideas that toggle around in our minds all the time, where there's not typically a platform where we can take these thoughts and form them into reality. I had the good fortune in 2016 of participating in the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, where the concept of the fourth industrial revolution, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with by now, was first unfolded. And in participating in that meeting, amongst many of the world's greatest minds, I was equally scared as I was excited. I was excited by the dawn of the digital world as was being shared within the meeting, but I was scared because I started to realize, as the only Caribbean participant, where we actually fell in this global conversation. I realized that in that moment, more than ever, that there were others driving our ultimate outcomes, and we were not owning the future of our region in a meaningful way. With the onset of the pandemic, we're obviously living in an unprecedented time. We're living in the most uncertain time in our history. And we're living in a time where the intersection between technology and innovation and society has never been more pronounced. I recall the message that was shared on the first day by the Honorable Mia Motley in what, seemingly was and has been taken as a very amazing speech that we obviously needed to hear. It has been shared so widely, beyond any concept that I think the team at Pivot would have had in terms of the broadness and the reach that her words would have had. But she gave a very timely call to action. For far too long, we have played second fiddle in our region. We have not operated at the forefront of our destinies. It is truly time for us in the Caribbean to rise as builders of the future. It is time for us to assert what tomorrow will look like, not only for our small islands, but also to participate in guiding what the best for the rest of the world will also be. I'll close by summing up what our ultimate hope for all of you is going forward with the movement. Pivot is intended to be a private sector-led movement, and I hope you will note from the participation in the various groups that you've been in that it is truly designed as we've stated. The intention is that you will continue with all the ideas that have been elevated through this experience. I'm sure many for the first time interacted with concepts that you've never really seen before. And the idea of exponential technologies that maybe you've never integrated in your working world. Beyond the major ideas that will be presented today that came out of the group sessions, we want to ensure that the participants of Pivot continue embodying this mindset in your daily lives and your approach to business. And we want to build a culture that becomes pervasive as much as possible throughout the region. And then hopefully we can have an infectious impact on the rest of the world. I'd like you to share this mentality with those close to you and around you. I'd like you to share the mentality with people involved in your business, your co-workers, etc. And our only hope coming out of this, beyond taking these grand exponential ideas to the next level, is that next year's Pivot, which is intended, will be bigger, better, and hopefully by then in person. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for your participation. I'll turn it back over to you, Golda. We're looking forward to exciting outcomes.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Kirk Anthony, who is one of the founders, or rather the founder of the Destination Experience. Destination Experience is a partner in this Pivot movement as we seek to gather and harness the imagination of all Caribbean people. We are also honored to be joined this morning by His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali. Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali was sworn in as Guyana's 9th executive president in August of 2020. He became a member of the National Assembly of Guyana in 2006 and was subsequently appointed to the portfolios of Minister of Housing and Water and Minister of Tourism, Industry and Commerce. During his time in the Ministry of Housing, he implemented the most extensive endowment campaign in the history of the country, backed by a massive distribution of lots to citizens of all social strata and geographic regions. We have shared all of our speaker bios in your agenda this morning, and so we invite you to read more about Dr. Ali and all of the work that he has been doing for the people of Guyana. But Dr. Ali, President Ali, we welcome you to Pivot.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm very pleased to be associated with this forum this morning. And I'm very thankful for the invitation in today's unveiling of our moonshots, the first step of many towards creating a more vibrant and resilient Caribbean. When I first learned about the pivot movement and the idea of making moonshots to create the future of our region, I was filled with inspiration and hope. We should all be proud to be part of something that is bigger than ourselves. And more importantly, we should be proud that we're doing this together. As sovereign states from Jamaica in the north to Suriname in the south, we are proud of each other, proud of our distinctiveness. Those aspects of civilization that make us stand out in the world are important to us. But I'm sure you would agree with me that there are some common threads that continue to bind us as one Caribbean. We love our culture, we love our cuisine, and we love our music. And most of all, we love each other. Our uniqueness binds us. When one Caribbean people succeeds, we all succeed. And history is littered with many of our successful people. So, in making these moonshots for the Caribbean, when one idea succeeds, we all succeed. When we embrace our visionaries and innovators and encourage them to dream big, we can make the impossible possible. The greatest move to technological advancement, the greatest move to innovation, the greatest move to uniqueness is the development of an idea. That is the greatest part of evolution, the development of ideas. But ideas remains just dreams unless we act on them, unless we move in a conscious way to achieve those ideas, to achieve those dreams, unless we move in a conscious way to implement programs and plans that would realize those dreams. And today, I'm proud to be part of such a movement, as such a shift in direction that would only do well for us in the future. As I reflected on the idea of moonshot, I was taken to a place where so many of us in the region have grown up, the cricket pitch. And notwithstanding the low points in our collective cricket history, some moments have been so lofty and grand, they remind us of our prosperity, and they remind us of our ability to dream big and work as one Caribbean team. Allow me to take you back to 1950, when a shipload of young West Indian cricketers set off from the Caribbean to make their moonshot, to make their moonshot. They would attempt to conquer the mighty England, the England cricket team, at Lord's Cricket Ground in front of the King. You and I have the privilege of looking back at this moonshot as an historical event. We can also look back and see the decades thereafter, in which the West Indies cricket team dominated the sport worldwide. But for the team that played Test cricket at Lord's in the summer of 1950, their perspective was very, very different. They were an unheralded set of players from colonies in the British West Indies who are now out on the world stage. What followed has become sporting legend. The West Indies won the Test series 3-1. Two West Indian fast bowlers, Al Valentine and Sonny Ramdin, rattled the British batting order, sealing their place in the history books. The team's outstanding and unexpected win was immortalized in a song by Caribbean Calypsonian Lord Beginner, who sang, "Hats went in the air, they jumped and shouted without fear. So at Lord's was a scenery bound to go down in history." I use this cricket example to demonstrate to you how through sport, men came together, players came together, went to Lord's, won a cricket series that none expected them to win. People from the colony. That inspired not only Caribbean people, but inspired people all across the world. It inspired the South Africans. It inspired Africa. And it placed the West Indies cricket team and the Caribbean people in a different light. We now know that this would be the first of many wins at Lord's for the West Indies. The real reign of West Indies cricket came after most countries gained independence from the Crown decades later. But the lesson of Ramdin, Valentine, and the first group of future makers is that we should keep aiming for what seems impossible, and we are better when we work together. On this note, I want to share with you a personal piece of reading. I was reading in the last few weeks The Transformation of Dubai. And in his writing, they asked the leader of Dubai now, why so big? Why so grand? So he explained, when he went to his first cabinet meeting, he outlined his vision for the future. And when he outlined that vision for the future, many of his cabinet ministers were doubtful. They said to him, "You're thinking so grand and big, but we have to catch up with the rest of the world. We are so behind the rest of the world. How will we get there if we don't catch up?" And he responded, "Who told you I want to catch up? I want to be ahead of them. I want to plan to be ahead of them." So in the Caribbean, a lot of people will tell us that we need to build ourselves up the curve. We need to get where the developed countries are before we think ahead. But we have a shorter window to get ahead. The good thing is that we have so many lessons learned. We have so many best practices already established that we don't have to reinvent the wheels in many cases. So I say to you that we have the greatest opportunity. We have the greatest opportunity in very challenging times. But in challenging times comes the greatest of minds, the greatest of ideas. And that should be our focus. We now know that this win at Lord's led to many countries having greater confidence in themselves and played a very important role in the independence movement and bringing attention to many, many global issues that we still deal with today. We know well that cricket is not the only arena in which we have distinguished ourselves as Caribbean people. Far from it. This region has produced leaders in every sphere, from science to art, sports to entrepreneurship. Now we have yet another moment to be at our best. Today, we'll be presented with the 9 moonshots developed here at the Pivot event. They represent deliberate and cooperative actions that we can take to make the future better for ourselves and the next generation. But the work is just beginning. Our innings starts now. The first cricketers to represent the West Indies on the world stage defined the sport and set that foundation for those who came after. The next generation of world-class cricketers that included Shivnarine Chanderpaul and Courtney Walsh knew it was possible to come from small countries in the Caribbean and work together to win. And so as the future makers of this event, we must pass on not only our plans, but also our moonshot mindset. As my colleague, Prime Minister Maya Mottley, stated at the opening of this event, the time has come for the people of this region to shed their lack of cultural confidence and allow the Caribbean to take its place on the scoreboard, especially in technology and innovation. Think of our challenges in the region, like climate change, as the fastballs we cannot avoid. It is not enough to defend the wicket. Technology is what we need to confront such deliveries and respond with hits beyond the boundaries. Leaders of government and industry are therefore obliged and obligated to create environments in which you have the freedom to think of new ideas and launch them. We are committed to doing this here in Guyana as our economy transforms and we welcome more foreign investments. We will use some of these new resources to foster local innovation, creativity, and research. But policy is nothing without the people to drive it. This is our moment to make moonshots. This is a moment to harness the collective energy of all Caribbean people. This is our moment to change the world. This is our time to shine. Thank you very much. Continue to shine.
Thank you so much, President Ali, for those very inspiring words. You are definitely aligned to everything that we are trying to achieve with this pivot movement, and we'll be seeing the evidence of it in a very short time. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you very much.
And we now move on to the reason that we're here this morning, the presentation or the reveal of our 9 moonshots. Future makers were divided into 3 groups by sector of focus, what we, the organizers, began to call the big groups: electric vehicles, digital transformation, and reimagining tourism. Then within these groups, they were further divided into subgroups to design their moonshots together. There were 9 subgroups in all, and therefore 9 moonshots. Today, we're going to hear presentations from the 9 subgroups in order of their sector, starting with electric vehicles. Then there will be a moment for question and answer after the presentation of each moonshot. So we invite you to please use our question and answer function here in Zoom so that we can have your questions ready to go at the end of each of the presentations by our subgroups. We will also hear from the facilitators from our partner Singularity University, who have led the discussions around these moonshots and led the development of these moonshots along with our future makers. So please, we ask you to share your questions with us as I hand over now to Sally Dominguez, who has been leading the Electric Mobility Group. Sally, welcome to the closing of the Pivot event, our Manifesto of Moonshots. Take it away.
Thank you, Golda. Hello, everybody. All right, so I'm Sally Dominguez. I'm a futurist, I'm an inventor, I'm an entrepreneur, and I am utterly inspired by the vision of our greater group and our subgroups. What's interesting is when we talk about the future, you know, we talk about 2040 and people are generally pushing to talk about exponential technologies. But the future is about exponential technologies and human potential. And what I've seen throughout our groups, throughout our working, is that we have had this vision, this dream that embodies the essence of the region and the dreams of the region and the potential of the region to not just be the playground of the world, but to be the powerhouse of the world. Throughout all of these sessions, normally my job as a facilitator on Moonshots is to keep people thinking broadly enough, keep the vision big enough, stop it from coming down to 10% and keep it at 10x. I've had no trouble doing that with my groups, because I think the playful spirit and also the entrepreneurial spirit of your region is such that, the thinking is already big. The thinking is big. And in my experience with these groups, the nitty gritty of today's reality did not get in the way of not only dreaming big, but we've also come up with a roadmap for each of these vehicles that gets it to either 2040 or in fact 2035. And I'm proud of my groups because they have covered the full gamut, from small, individual, quick, fleeting vehicles right up to super fast transit to enable the collective gathering of the entire region, islands and mainland. So I'm going to hand over to Ziki Allgrove. I'll be sharing for all of the groups because I understand there's a little uncertainty on the internet side of things. But I just want to thank my teams. I want to thank IADB and the whole organization for this opportunity, because we have come up with, just through 4 sessions, such a doable roadmap to transform the region. And I'm very excited to share it with you. So here we go. Ziki, hang on. Let me just share the screen and let's get this moving. Hang on. All right. Here we go. Ziki, take it away, mate. I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, yeah.
Ziki, you got to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, here we go.
Okay. Good morning. Let me do that all over again. I have to say, the messaging that we've heard this morning is so inspiring. And I think what's been more inspiring has actually been working with my fellow Caribbean citizens across all the islands. And so I'm going to dive right into what I'd call the engine behind some of the moonshots. So if you think about the green hydrogen powerhouse, and as you look at each of the moonshots that we have after this, I want you to think about those and the context of those in through this lens as well. So next slide. So this question has come up, not this question, but this topic, this theme has come up. Can the Caribbean lead the world in the development of green hydrogen? And before I go down that path even further, it's like, why hydrogen? Why does hydrogen matter? What's the big deal? And if you think about it, hydrogen is the most abundant element, not only in the world, but also in the Caribbean. And it's an energy carrier. It's a carrier of energy which exists all around us. Now, the other side to hydrogen is that actually when you use hydrogen to generate energy, the byproduct is water and steam. So if you look at it in that context, you think, oh, well, that's wonderful, an energy source that produces something that is entirely renewable and it's zero emissions. Now, the reality is that today there are a number of industries that produce what we call gray hydrogen. And what that means is you need to use a hydrocarbon fuel, right, to produce that hydrogen. And there's blue hydrogen as well. You say, well, I'll capture those greenhouse gases and do carbon capture and recapture that. Now, I take you to the next level. And if you look at it in the context of green hydrogen, and you look at our region and look at the things that we have as a region, and we have sunlight, we have wind, we have waves, we have current. So when you start to look at the production of hydrogen as an energy source and look at it through the abundance of resources we have as a region, and actually these are the things we're known for in our region. And so going back to that original question, can the Caribbean lead the world in the development of green hydrogen? I wouldn't say we can, I would say we will, and we should. And that, to me, is the premise of what we're doing today. And, the message from the president and the opening remarks are, we aren't trying to catch up with the rest of the world. We are going to lead the world. And that's sort of the premise behind why we're doing what we do. Next slide. So as we move into the individual moonshots, if you look to the left of the slide, you'll see some of the conceptual ideas that that are there. But what I'd like you to think about, right, is if you look in the middle, there's this hydrogen that exists in abundance in our region. And if you look to the right, you'll see that there are these methods of producing green energy to split that H2O molecule to produce that hydrogen. So, and these are all existing technologies. So if you look at it, there is, they're generating electricity and generating power from tidal barriers, from solar, from wind. And where this really comes to play as we look at the moonshots that we see coming down the line, is that the science and the process is actually very straightforward and simple. It's electrolysis, it's basic physics and basic chemistry. And so as I close this and we look at the moonshots, I'd like you to think about this as we move forward. These moonshots are moonshots that actually can be launched. And when you look at these moonshots as we move forward, I want you to think about certain things. At one point in history, somebody looked at the bird and said, I want to fly. And we eventually did. I don't know if you remember the Dick Tracy comics, where in the past they're talking into their watch and making phone calls. Think about that today, right? So as we look at these moonshots, look at what the resources we have, the people we have, the intelligence we have, the natural infrastructure and resources we have. And I'd like you to leave you with that thought as we move into these moonshots in terms of what's possible.
Thanks, Ziki. Fantastic. So we're going to launch into the moonshots, and I'd like you to notice that the overreaching theme is independent, hydrogen positive, energy positive region. And also, if you'll notice that each of these concepts touch the earth or any of the elements so lightly that there is almost no need for other infrastructure. And that's our aim, is to not only advance transport 10%, but to radically rethink its entire relationship with the people and the environment. All right, team one. Oh, hang on. CWE concept team. Are you ready?
We're ready.
Let's hit it.
All right. 1 second. Okay, good morning, everybody. So we are presenting CWE, which may sound a bit familiar, and it should, because it's named after BWE, which was the largest Caribbean airline at the time of its close. It was meant to connect, and it did connect people across the region and the diaspora, and that's exactly what CWE is meant to do. And because it's traveling across the sea, we've played on that CWE name. So this vessel will travel across the water at top speed, going from the top of the chain in the Bahamas all the way down to the mainland in Guyana in under 6 hours, which of course for us Caribbean travelers is ideal. But it goes deeper than that. CWE is also a play on Caribbean English, CWE, which means, we see us, we see ourselves. So in moving up and down this island chain, we also finally begin to see ourselves, not just as individual countries, but as a whole. So imagine these, young boys, these, Gen Zers in 20 years traveling on this vessel that is, distinctly their own, our own, the Caribbean's, the Caribbean's own. So as you travel on CWE, which we're going to learn more about in a couple seconds, there's only Caribbean content on board. It connects us. We learn about our similarities and differences, and we see we. Next slide.
Thanks, Nisa. Good morning, everyone. So, designed by the Caribbean for the Caribbean, this is an opportunity for the experiential generation to truly come together. You see on the right-hand side there, the 400-seater Seawee vessel. It passes by every nation in the region. It's powered by hydrogen via fuel cells, right? And it moves along a route which starts way up north in the Bahamas and ends down south in Guyana via Suriname. The vessel, like I said, is powered by hydrogen via fuel cells, traveling at top speeds of 240 miles per hour. At points along the journey, it will be partly submerged.
Have we lost Kelly?
Hello, Nisa.
Okay, and it's so much more than a mode of transport.
She's back.
So much more than a mode of transport. You'll finally be able to make day trips, as Nisa said, in under 6 hours. Now, top left here, you see these little wees? These hold up to 15 people or cargo. And basically, they will, what happens is if I'm in St. Lucia or any other Caribbean country for that matter, I can go to my Seawee port, board a little wee, and join the main vessel. These little wees are autonomous, and they autonomously join the major vessel as it moves along the route. Go ahead, Nisa.
Next slide, please. So what's on board Seawee? Well, first of all, there's something for everybody. So when you get on, you're strapped into swivel chairs with seatbelts that offer a 360 view. So think roller coasters. And after we've achieved top speed, it's safe to walk around and explore. Think of, you know, when you're on an airplane and you've achieved cruising altitude and you can walk around. So again, it's really meant to be this immersive Caribbean experience. So there's a party area for the young and young at heart. The areas are separated by country. So let's say you're going to St. Lucia, but you want to learn about Dominica on the way, you can absolutely do that as well. You get a taste of the islands in terms of their culture, history, music, and of course, food. There is something for everybody on board. We will also be using sonar technology. I mean, obviously, we're quite concerned about the minimal disruption to marine life. So we will use sonar technology to do just that as we achieve top speed and go from up and down the island chain. Next slide.
Nisa, it seems as though Kelly had an interruption with her internet connection. So if you could please proceed on her behalf.
Just to wrap it up. So our research has determined it's perfectly feasible to launch Seawee ahead of 2040. We've scoped out the project and we're confident that this detailed timeline is accurate and achievable. As you can see here, we're looking at building a prototype to run on hydrogen by 2025, at which point we would deploy little wee pods to run cargo. By 2030, we expect to be trialing autonomous vessels running from ports. By 2035, we would expand across the region, focusing on increasing speed for the longest journey. And by 2040, full launch using green hydrogen and achieving speeds of 260 miles per hour.
And that's it. So we hope you enjoyed Seawee. I hope I can see all of you on board in 2040. And I hope you realize the vision of the Caribbean, us as Caribbean people, seeing ourselves, seeing each other, and more importantly, letting the world see who we really are. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
So good.
Thank you so much for that, Sally.
Sorry.
We have a moment where we just take 1 or 2 questions, if that's okay with you. And I believe actually that the first question is perhaps for you, and it comes from Marcelo, who asks, what is the competitive advantage to produce green hydrogen in the Caribbean region? Is there a big difference between gray hydrogen and green hydrogen production costs?
Massive. Okay, so the huge difference is that green hydrogen is abundant. It's essentially produced from renewable sources. So if you're going to use current or wave. I'm suggesting we as a team have looked at wave, but really current, because it can be deep down. It's less likely as an infrastructure to be damaged by hurricanes or extreme events. And there is technology rapidly increasing, exponentially decreasing in cost around current, solar, and actually even, just to put it out there, NASA also has a conversion of carbon dioxide to energy, which we've been looking at as one of the things that are on board. But in terms of green hydrogen, the region has such abundant sunlight, wind, and obviously current. If you're on an island, very similar to Australia, which is also leading the world in current technology and wave. If you're on an island, you have abundant currents and waves, and therefore we have the ability to not just generate all of our energy needs from green hydrogen, which most futurists are predicting will be on parity in cost with grey hydrogen by 2030. You have the opportunity to be a net positive producer of this energy, which makes you literally a powerhouse of the world. So the cost of green hydrogen right now is high, but rapidly decreasing. And the fact is that you're not relying on anything but the natural resources you're already renowned for.
Thank you for that, Sally. And we have another question, which I believe is for you and the SeaWe team, Nisa and Kelly. The use of sonar technology has been linked to widespread damage of dolphin marine life via interrupting their natural navigation skills. Can you expand more on protections for marine life if this is implemented? Have you considered that?
I appreciate the question, and unfortunately, in 4 sessions, we may not have been able to, accurately refine or define what that marine protection might look like, but it's absolutely at the fore of development. So whenever this does go into actual development, and I'm saying whenever, not if ever, it's certainly something that it's, on the top of the list for consideration. So it may not be sonar, but it surely will be something else.
And we've discussed
just to expand on that.
Sorry, yeah.
Thanks, Sally. Just to expand on that, so the feasibility studies start next year in 2021, and that is, of course, the first feasibility study, at which point along the route will we absolutely not be able to be submerged in order to protect some marine life below the surface.
Yeah, I was going to add, we're also talking about shipping lanes. I mean, we already have this existence of shipping lanes where ships head along. And in our case, we were talking just, and we're obviously at nascent stage of how we do this. But if we were to mark out the very, very fast route, then it's possible on those markers to have devices that will repel marine life or keep them at bay. That's our plan. But of course, we need to research that.
Thank you, Sally. I believe we can move on to the presentation from subgroup B, if you'd like to introduce them.
Okay. Flying fish team, are we ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Let's do it.
All right, thank you, everybody. It's my honor to present our moonshot from subgroup B. Our mission was to improve the quality of life for disconnected communities. And so we set about by looking at nature, and we were really inspired by what we saw around us. In particular, we call this the flying fish. It will deliver in 3 areas for the Caribbean. The 3 areas are energy, water, and mobility. It will deliver energy in the form of clean energy distribution and affordable energy. It will deliver water in the form of clean water at no cost to various communities. And it will deliver mobility in the form of accessible and affordable transport. The combination of these 3 areas will result in independence for the Caribbean. Next slide, please, Sally. So what we are proposing is a closed loop, hydrogen-based transport system that can go over both land and water. It's a disruptive green light touch technology. It can travel anywhere without the need for additional infrastructure such as roads. The flying fish themselves are autonomous hovering pods capable of accommodating a family. Each pod has swivel seating and will be fully closed with windows to enjoy panoramic views. The pods can actually link up with one another, and that will support larger groups traveling together or the movement of cargo. And the pods are fueled in regional areas called ponds across the Caribbean. The flying fish will have subscription-based and vetted memberships. It can be summoned using an app. And what it does essentially for the region is it transitions the region from traditional utilities to decentralized energy and transportation distribution. The employees of these utilities will be trained to become high-skilled operators of the system. As you see in the bottom of the slide there, we have a timeline. Our timeline calls for technology R&D and feasibility studies in the early stages, followed by prototyping and testing in the middle stages, and ultimately deployment of the system by 2030. And now I'd like to turn it over to Natasha, who's going to tell us a story about how the flying fish will improve the quality of life for one Caribbean family. Natasha?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We'd like you to imagine a family. So Aniki and Sean wake early to get the kids ready for school. This was their first day back in Kingston after 14 years in Miami. Today, Aniki has a trial rotation on the campuses in Trinidad and TCI, and Sean has meetings in Trinidad and Cayman. Aniki scheduled a flying fish pod for the family at 7 a.m., and here's the beat of the steel pan on her phone moments before seeing the pod on its approach. They drop the kids at St. Andrews before hopping down to Trinidad for their 9 a.m. appointments. Aniki and Sean meet for lunch and then each head to their respective meetings in TCI and Caymans, Sean summoning a second pod. Before hopping back to Jamaica at 4:30, Aniki gets some TCI toffee for the kids and manages to surprise them outside St. Andrews at 6 p.m. After delivering the passengers safely home, the pods rejoin the pond nearby to recharge. A few hours later, flying fish pods are summoned again. Tropical Storm David is now approaching and expected to bring significant amounts of rain. Almost everyone who lives along the Rio Grande has summoned a flying fish, and Mr. Nelson and his family board using the easy access ramp. They join the Kingston Pond to wait out the passage of the storm from the safety of the storm shelter created by the pods. The group takes bottles of clean water and fuel with them as they disembark back home.
Fantastic. And I think, can I add to that just a little? So the idea, just in case anyone's wondering, pre-questions, about the water and the generation of energy. So these pods are designed to withstand hurricane. They're a specific shape that deflects wind so that they can hunker down a bit like a turtle could. They're designed to cross water and land because that means that no matter what the situation, they can get people from A to B to C. And the water generation is actually the hydrogen byproduct. So as they're on board, they're generating the drinking water that they'll then take with them when they get off. I know you guys said that, but I'm just making sure everyone understands the genius of the system because I just love that section. All right, Golda, questions?
Yes, so we don't have any specific questions on flying fish just yet, but I want to invite our panelists to please, if you see a question arise and we don't have time to answer it, please feel free to just type your answer into the Q&A function so that we can respond to some of these questions that are coming in from our attendees this morning. We do have a general question for you and this group. Sally, can we get a bit more on where the technology is at this time to capture hydrogen energy and the timeline for development, some of the steps to achieve the final goal?
Sure. Yeah, hydrogen is one of my passions, so we're in my wheelhouse here. Although, just want to be clear, did not push it too hard with the group because I think once you look at the benefits of hydrogen in terms of just the parity with distance on gasoline, the power that it delivers, and then this possibility that you can already generate hydrogen from solar. Albeit it's more expensive to generate from solar right at this moment, 2020, than it is to take it from fossil fuel. However, wave energy and current energy are what really, and the combination which people are already experimenting with of floating structures that have wind above the surface and wave and current below the surface. So a hybrid energy production from renewables that can generate hydrogen. But we're also looking at several of these vehicles on onboard generation. So you can generate hydrogen from seawater, for instance. You could desalinate the seawater, keep the salt separately, use the salt for saltwater batteries, salt batteries, and then the water to produce hydrogen. Or there are brand new technologies that have just been announced August this year by Stanford researchers, which can actually take salt water and turn it into hydrogen and use it. So the technology around hydrogen fuel cells is a huge area of growth right now, and several countries are pumping money into it. And our part of our scheme was to say, when people talk about green hydrogen, they talk about scale. But when you have islands, when you have smaller populations dispersed and decentralized, this is the ideal opportunity to look at decentralized energy. We don't need one hydrogen production for the region. We need to decentralize, which is more resilient, which is more future forward, and which allows us to pilot a program immediately and see results. So in terms of the ability to roll out green hydrogen in this region, you're actually better positioned than a large country that needs to push it all out from a central infrastructure.
Thank you for that, Sally. And thank you to the Flying Fish team. I think we can move on to the next subgroup.
Great. Okay, now we have Fet Travail. This is exciting too. I'm so excited about these groups. Okay, Fet Travail team, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Let's hit it.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. At Fet Travail, we believe that a sitting vehicle is a sign of opportunity in the market to optimize the lives of people in the Caribbean. To be one Caribbean, Fet Travail poses to give all people limitless access to all of the Caribbean through land, sea, and air. Transport systems affect social and economic inclusion and opportunity, so it is vital. Fet Travail, through a Caribbean-specific visa system, brings fast, high-quality public transport to residents going to work, mothers going to play, a surgeon traveling to perform a procedure, and tourists seeking to explore each island without the boundaries of roads and flight schedules. Upon first glance, you may think travel to a fete, but to our French, English, and celebration-minded islanders, this means the ability to have a balance of work, travail, and party, fete. So we offer you Fet Travail. So this is our outlook for the vehicle. It's designed with vertical liftoffs built to ultimately transport up to 30 people to popular island destinations and to remote island locations, surmounting obstacles like rocky terrain and endless traffic at a speed of roughly 270 miles per hour or 430 kilometers per hour. And it does so using the direction shiftable blades, most notably seen by Dyson products. These features, such as noise reduction components and hydrogen fueling, are made with community sustainability in mind. And with that same community in mind, low-cost subscription pricing for Caribbean residents will be part of the Fet Travail brand. By 2030, we expect to see growth in the overall and port infrastructure, as well as confirmation of the autonomous features. This keeps us on track for a rollout of emergency medevac Fet Travail vehicles to transport the best doctors, EMTs, medical equipment at very efficient speeds where they are needed, putting the Travail in Fet Travail. Next slide, Sally. So imagine this. Click. A young, so we're gonna do it like that. A young girl just graduated from the University of West Indies in Jamaica and has an interview for her dream job in the Dominican Republic, 754 kilometers away. A team in Barbados has a cricket match in St. Kitts, that's 578 kilometers or maybe roughly 360 miles. And next. Sadly, a middle-aged man just collapsed in a remote section of St. John, Virgin Islands. Next. With an environmentally conscious fleet of Fet Travail, each one of these people has access to a travel system that can be reached by the push of a phone button and to their destinations in moments to less than 2 hours. They have that access. In an emergency or as a specialized service, they can be picked up at any location or travel to a hub and board through the many access panels in the rear of the craft. And in comfort and without lengthy planning, a trip that would be upwards of $300 now takes no planning and a foreseen 90% reduction in costs. Fet Travail is a transportation solution within reach.
Perfect. And I think one thing that we don't see in these renderings that is an intrinsic part of what the team developed is that you can see the little landing legs on this this vehicle, but we were also looking at a Lockheed Martin prototype of a gentle landing Zeppelin. What we envisage is when Makisa talks about the ability to land in difficult terrain, in inaccessible areas, we have a cushion that can also extend underneath this vehicle to allow it to settle down on terrain that would be otherwise inaccessible, which is a key part of the Medivac, but also a key part of accessibility for tourism for locals into regions without disturbing. You know, the whole hovercraft and cushion technology is this idea that hovercraft or cushion can be on top of a crab and not kill it. That will be the plan. We don't want to kill the crabs.
Thanks for that, Sally, and thank you to the FETRAVI team. Very exciting stuff indeed. We don't have any specific questions for that team, but we do have a question about the involvement of private investors. Julie is asking, how does Massey, one of the regional conglomerates, and other private sector investors get involved in projects like SeaWe? Have we thought about that at all?
I was actually hoping that Kurt could answer that, because I'm also very curious about how that how it works now and how it could work for a large scale project like this.
Who are we asking?
Kirk Anthony.
Oh yeah, okay, good.
It doesn't seem as though he's available right now, but we will ask him to pop into the Q&A section and provide an answer for us. But I think we should definitely move on to the Reimagining Tourism overview. Thank you so much to Sally and to all of the future makers who developed these moonshots related to electric mobility in the Caribbean. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. Thanks, teams.
I now pass you on to Nicholas Hahn, who has been the facilitator leading the discussions on reimagining tourism in the Caribbean. Nicholas?
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Nicholas Hahn. I'm speaking to you from East Africa right now. I'm on faculty at Singularity University, and I am an entrepreneur working on solving the world's biggest challenges, and I'm an agitator for corporations and entrepreneurs and governments to think differently about how we can solve the world's biggest challenges. I'm also, just so happens, launching an eco lodge in Zanzibar. So I'm thinking about the future of tourism very, very acutely. In the Caribbean, tourism, as you all know, is vital to the economy, somewhere around $50 billion per year. In terms of GDP, it's somewhere around 15% of all GDP. And in terms of livelihoods, people's jobs dependent on tourism, it's more than 10% of people. It's vital. So it's really important for the Caribbean, as you all know, to be thinking, what is the future of tourism? And is the current way of doing tourism set in motion, or can we reimagine it? What are the new opportunities? What are the threats and challenges on the horizon? So the team of people that we work with on reimagining tourism, these are moonshot ideators. They got into that mindset and they allowed their minds to be free about what the possibilities are. They broke up into three main themes. One of them had to do with culture, one of them had to do with the environment, and one of them had to do with personal transformation and wellness. So we're gonna hear moonshot ideas that relate to each one of those themes. And the first person who's going to do this is Ariel. Ariel, I welcome you to come and present as I share my screen for you. There seems to be an issue with me sharing my screen. Can I ask one of my team members to please share the Google Docs presentation? Olivia or anyone else? There's an issue with me sharing. I'm not sure if I have authority.
I'll share it for you.
Thank you, Sally. So Sally's going to pull this up and get us on to the first.
1 second.
Group. Thank you. Sorry for that hiccup. And Ariel, you are on deck as soon as we get this sorted out.
Is this the, no, okay, here we go.
Actually, it's at the bottom. We're slightly out of order on our deck, so go down further.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Perfect. Ariel, please, welcome.
Great. Morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm just going to get straight into it. I'm Ariel from Trinidad, and I'm representing Group 1. And I'm here today to get everyone to reimagine tourism with me. I want to take you on a journey through time, 10 to 20 years into the future. I want you to free your mind, forget what you know, what you like, what you understand, forget life as we know it, and think of a time when tech is the norm. What will the Caribbean look like? Will we adapt? Did we adapt? Did we leverage it? Did we use it to its maximum potential? Did we find a way to create our own masterpiece? Who knows? Let's go to 2040 and see. Next slide, please. The problem, so we're in 2040, and what is the big problem in 2040? And the problem is preservation of culture. Why? Because tech has its advantages and it has its advantages. Over time, people are becoming less and less in touch with reality, less face-to-face. We can't even hug anymore, it's frowned upon. What will happen in 20 years from now if we continue to be invested in social media? It will have downsides. So how do we keep these stories alive, the stories of the Caribbean people, the music, the food, the culture? How do we leverage technology and find that balance to really promote culture and the real life experiences? We do it by this moonshot here, to create a twin of the Caribbean with a plethora of sensors and restaurants, clubs, beaches, underwater, forests, and the like, which will allow for the creation of virtual immersion experiences. That's a lot of big words. What does that mean? Next slide, please. Let me just break it down for you guys, right? Because I want you all to put on your imaginary VR headsets and let's go on a little journey, right? Imagine laying on a beach in Montego Bay and in comes a tiny drone delivering your very own tailor-made souvenir packages with all things Jamaica. Imagine being on vacation in St. Lucia and receiving clues to find hidden digital treasures for points, like finding a digital dancing banana at the top of a waterfall, followed by a full-on history of the banana industry in St. Lucia. Imagine your boss just denied your time off and now you're stuck in New York in the cold weather, missing out on Trinidad Carnival. You basically have a tobacco. What now? Only the next best thing. And there's a reason I said next best thing, because I want it to be clear, it can never replace reality. So feel the music, feel the vibe, feel the sun, and feel the wine, but virtually. Imagine you're a local pan maker and you just delivered a request for a 3D printed steel pan all the way in Australia using your own signature design. It's a lot of crazy thoughts, right? Next slide, please. But not so crazy, because every great innovation and every great idea came from a decision 10 to 20 years in the past. And what is that decision right now? What is the next step to get us there to enjoy all these crazy ideas and all these big fancy technologies? Is by catching up to the rest of the world, by creating a digital network, a very creative, interconnected travel app for the entire Caribbean, allowing users to browse activities, chat with travelers, a community of other people, all are very interactive. How is it going to pave the way for us to really achieve this moonshot? And first it's going to digitize information. It's going to pull together all the information. It's going to have pictures, location, pins, and all the like. It's going to connect people. It's going to connect travelers. It's going to connect travelers with hosts and service providers. It's going to provide an e-commerce platform, so there will be no problems with payments, a seamless transaction between everybody. It's going to be rich, it's going to yield rich data. So by the time 2040 is here, we will have so much information on all the travelers that have come to the tourists and use the app that we can now tailor packages specifically for them and give them exactly what they like. We will have a reward system through this app where we will encourage people through a point system to go out and actually do activities and take pictures and share it and give referrals. And these referrals will also help to build credibility through the reviews and rewarding reviews. We'll also have a sustainability plan where we could actually connect people to nonprofit organizations and get them to donate and provide their support. And of course, last but not least, we will have one brand and one voice where we could pivot in any direction using the technology and the connections that we have and that we've built with the foundation of the app to really promote the entire Caribbean region. One voice and one strength and one brand. Thank you very much, guys. Any questions?
Thank you for that, Ariel. Definitely something to look forward to there. You had me thinking about it and feeling like I really want to have this app on my phone right now. We don't have any questions yet specifically related to this project, this moonshot. However, I invite you to please respond if questions arise in the Q&A function. We do have a general question for all of our attendees today, which is about following along with these moonshots. People want to know how they can get involved and how they can learn more about how these moonshots are going to develop. And so we just invite you to follow Caribbean Pivot on social media, follow our website, check in with us, and we will be sharing all of these moonshots as well as the roadmap for how they can be achieved. So the big answer to that question is to follow us, and we'll be providing some resources for you to do that as we go along. Thank you again, Ariel. And Nicholas, I would like you to introduce the second subgroup in this reimagining tourism theme. Thank you.
Great. I'll do that, but I do want to make one more comment about this moonshot idea of a digital twin of the Caribbean. We all know if you put on a virtual reality headset, the possibility of experiencing something afar. A digital twin would be this massive plethora of sensors that are not just detecting visually, but also smells and what things feel like, and allow people from the entire world to be able to experience the Caribbean from afar. And one other aspect of that it would do is it would democratize access to the benefit of tourism for Caribbean citizens, because anybody could opt in to become part of generating the digital experience. It could be the local pub. It could be the local jerk chicken restaurant. It could be a church that would opt in. It could be someone's home that opts in, that allows their environment to be accessible to people who want to experience it from afar. So the possibility is also to transform the way tourism economy is designed right now, which is rather centralized, as you know, in the Caribbean, to actually democratize it as well. So the next group focused on the environment, and we have Alistair lined up to speak about that. Welcome, Alistair.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Very happy to be here. Our bit of it was to take on what we saw as the absence of the environment at the center of the tourism product and the absence of the average person at the center of that product, and all the things that means for the Caribbean and our region. So current reality is what we see here, where there are disparate players in the market with different levels of power, different engagements. So there is Miss Imo in the corner. She's a farmer. So she produces, food for subsistence, but also does a bit to give to hotels. You have entities outside of the region who may want to enjoy what we have, but may not have the money to actually get their students there, like the SIA Ed, which is a South African education business. There is Zandals, the hotel chain, which people most commonly associate with existing tourism, right? There's your version of Kevin, the tour guide, the DJ, the civil servant. He does everything, right? He has a little piece, but it's on a level of a hustle. And then we know there is, like the powerful business interest who can access some of these, like definitely the transport services we saw earlier, right? And they're coming to do business and own things. So in effect, this quote from Frantz Fanon, like 60, 70 years ago, still in many ways typifies the tourism experience. So we can move forward to the next slide and see what we can do about that. Can we advance one? Thank you. So what we envision is changing the relationship of us all, people, in all kinds of ways to the actual region and to the product. So the major prism of this is carbon. So currently, we all carry a carbon footprint of different sizes and we have no idea. It's seen we produce waste in lots of ways that we don't keep track of, we don't know what's going on, and we all have different levels. So what if, as people come and experience the region in many, many ways, and as we all produce what it is that we want people to be excited about and enjoy, that carbon actually leaves as people enter. And so what you're doing is changing us into a product where the credit is with the declining carbon that's current or present in the atmosphere or in the sea. So that means that people are then at the center of this planning. They are digitizing how they do what they do, the travel, the food, etc. They are changing how they promote products. Tourists are interfacing with us both digitally, but are getting points and credits for doing things that reduce their carbon footprint. So imagine people having a literal number or a score that they can keep track of and trade for benefits or access to the product in much the same ways that the previous presentation showed. So this moonshot requires that we do things, everything that we do in our economy is actually changed in relation to the amount of carbon being produced, so that we actually end up on the other side and that you get a regenerative situation going on, but with residents at the center of it as the producers and the beneficiaries. Key to this also is that this becomes a totally investable venture for everyone. Yeah. So what do we need? Because that's a lot of things and it's very wide. So at the systems level, what is required? So if we go to the next one, essentially 4 things. So we understand that for people to think about the environment as this thing that we all can invest in that has tangible outcomes in all kinds of levels, we need to think differently. And so literally rescoping our education is crucial. Moving from currently where we think of transparency and accountability as this thing for governments only, but literally transparency as a part of accountability. So we're talking about integrating blockchain technology, not in just finance, but in how we account for environmental use and degradation, so that literally the air gets more transparent. Different types of financial models to ensure that we can all invest at different levels in these new technologies to drive this. Obviously, the renewable energy is a big part of this as well, because it doesn't happen without that, even at the level of buildings and what they can do to actually contribute to being carbon sinks. And finally, everything should be people-centered so that you have campaigns around that. So you're using the VR we saw before, Internet of Things, so that we are integrating people's experiences all together. And definitely that local populations feel that they own materially the benefits and the responsibilities of this very broad-based product. So that is our concept.
Thank you for that, Alistair. Very interesting indeed. And as the facilitator of today's session, I'm going to ask our panelists to just pivot with me a bit. We did say that we would have a short time for Q&A after each presentation, but what we're observing is that there's a delay in the questions coming in. So we're just going to ask the panelists to please use the Q&A function and type your responses in there. Nicholas, I would like to move on to the next subgroup just to keep us on time throughout this session. Thank you again, Alistair.
Sure. Thank you, Golda. Thank you, Alistair, for that. So our next one focuses on human transformation and this mega trend that's happening with tourism around the world, that people are not just looking for experiences, they're looking for transformation. And the Caribbean is primed to be able to offer the future of what that might look like. And our next presenter is going to share a moonshot on that theme. Michelle, welcome, please.
Greetings from Belize. So the 2040 challenge is human transformation to reach abundance and true potential as humans. Moving away from chaos, disconnect, conflict, imbalance, desire, shame, power, materialism, corruption, sadness, and loneliness. Next slide, please. The moonshot being the Caribbean people as ambassadors of abundance, and serve as examples of all humanity to learn from and to transform. They are also portholes for the Caribbean. Next slide, please. Everyone close your eyes, please. Visualize Peter, a 55-year-old male recently released from prison, seeking personal transformation, mind, body, and spirit connection. He uses a virtual platform which analyzes his emotional inputs. The results recommend he connects with the Caribbean people as they are ambassadors of abundance. He travels virtually to the Caribbean and absorbs the positive, abundant energy of the people. He accesses sensors which connect him to the emotions of marine life, the flora and the fauna, to experience oneness. He virtually experiences meditation in the Caribbean jungles, caves, and Mayan temples, accessing the ancient wisdom of the ancestors. He utilizes the technology of humanity to release biomemory, traumas, and the limited ego identity mindset, gaining a deeper connection to the divine. He virtually walks barefooted on the beach and in the jungle, absorbing the nutrients to heal his physical body and to connect more to Mother Nature. He uses empathy chips, which allow him to see the world from the perspective of the Caribbean abundance ambassadors, and he experiences oneness. Open your eyes, please. He is awakened and transformed, stepping into his true potential. He embarks on a life of abundance, gratitude, compassion, connection to source, and self-realization. He is inspired to share this with others. The immediate changes that need to happen to make this moonshot a reality are: the basic needs such as food, clothing, and shelter must be met. Caribbean people must embark on transformation training to become representatives of this progressive and evolutionary community. Education must move from reductionist teaching methods using incorrect knowledge to that of expansion beyond the mind. People must consume locally sourced living foods, practice meditation and breath work to cultivate a witness consciousness, and to release biomemory and conditioning to shift energy to a cellular level. This is epigenetics. Practice self-study to expand awareness and refine intellect, gain self-love, respect, civic pride, seeing life as happening for us and ultimately through us. Set a tone of devotion and gratitude each day, invoking heart intelligence, developing a deep trust in the divine. Selfless service, moving away from that ego identity of self and offering service without anything needed in return. Spending more time in nature and deepening environmental consciousness. And lastly, all of the above must be instilled in schools from an early age. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you for that, Michelle. You know, the very inspiring thing about this morning's presentations is that all of these moonshots are exactly as their name suggests. And so we are really excited to have such a variety of ideas coming forward in our session. Michelle, I would invite you please to answer any questions that are related to your moonshots in the Q&A function, as I've asked the other panelists to do, to keep us on time. Is there something you'd like to add?
For me?
No.
Yes. Oh, I thought you were going to speak. Sorry. Nicholas?
No,
I
didn't
think
have
we
anything
can.
to add.
Mm-hmm.
No. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle, did you want to comment on something?
No, I think I tried to cover it in the time frame. And I think this is a human transformation for the Caribbean is vital, a fundamental need to expand on all the technologies, that if our people are ambassadors, the Caribbean will thrive.
Thank you, Michelle. Nicholas, I believe that I can ask you to please close off on behalf of your group, the Reimagining Tourism Group, so that we may move on to Robert with digital transformation.
Yeah, mine is just to say thank you to the entire team. There's a number of people behind all these ideas, and thank you to the whole big effort.
Thank you again, Nicholas. And now we move on to our next group, our next big group, Digital Transformation. And they've been led through these sessions over the last 2 weeks, developing moonshots with Robert Suarez. Robert, welcome.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Robert Suarez. I'm a designer, entrepreneur, and an impact driver. We know that digital technologies will absolutely transform the way we eat, make, move, and live on this planet. But it's really up to us to ensure that that happens in a very just and fair way. You will hear from Charles, Anushka, Stefan, and Zariel as they share their team's visions for 2040, a Caribbean that has transformed over 20 years to one as abundant, digitized, and excessively humane community and culture. So with that, I would love to share on behalf of my teams as we dig into their visions, their team's visions for 2040, the challenges they're addressing, and really, how they're going to get there. So Charles, take it away.
Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to the H2 Growth Moonshot presentation. My name is Charles Basad. Next slide, please, Robert. The challenge my team has embarked upon is to achieve food and water security in the region by the year 2040 through digital transformation. As we have learned during the pandemic, nations of the world tend to take care of themselves first. But many of the countries in our region are too small to find solutions to many challenges. So we need to work together, utilizing our individual strengths to achieve a greater sum, to ensure the survival and prosperity of our people. Next slide, please. Our moonshot aims to deliver an integrated management system, IMS, to collect and collate data from across the region, supplied by various users. The IMS will be supplied with data by rainfall monitoring devices, water collection and distribution authorities, farmers, agro-processors, retailers, and consumers. The IMS, utilizing artificial intelligence, then transforms all this raw data into valuable information, providing trends and projections so the private and public sector can make optimal production decisions for themselves and their stakeholders, distributing resources more efficiently to meet consumers' needs. Next slide, please. Getting there will require a unified Caribbean action plan to make the IMS a success. The IMS will be championed by the private sector with strategic support from the public sector, with the goal to significantly increase food production in the region through improved water management, leading to reduced production costs and higher outputs. The IMS creation will require a dedicated team to develop a groundbreaking software that is regionally embraced and utilized by stakeholders. This can be achieved through engaging and educating farmers and agro-processors to demonstrate how the IMS can create efficiencies through the optimization of resource inputs. It will allow for the strengthening of the water management infrastructure and create a system for distribution of agricultural grade water so precious potable water can be conserved. The resulting target of reduced cost of production will positively impact the region by facilitating the availability of food to every member state at reasonable prices, with the added benefits of reducing our extra-regional food dependency and import bills. As one Caribbean with one love for all our people, we can create this pioneering productivity tool to help not only ourselves, but the world. And as I come to a close, I'd just like to say this pandemic and climate change has taught us that if we don't adapt and we don't come together as one, we won't be able to survive. And without it, and without unifying the Caribbean, it'll be even more challenging. I'd just like to say thank you, and it was a pleasure being your presenter for the day.
Thank you for that, Charles. And I would like to ask a question that has been posed here by David. It's not specifically related to your moonshot, Charles, but I would like to open it up to the facilitators and any of the other presenters or future makers as well. Charles is asking, the ideas are interesting and commendable, but I'm concerned about three things. One, the research and development dependencies, I'm not seeing that the technology is resident, or some of the technology is resident in the Caribbean. Would anyone care to comment on this?
I'd like to. I did just write an answer, but you know, we live in a global economy. There is no reason why a technology needs to be inherently in a region to be pioneered in the future in a region. And so if you were to run like an open, let's all get together and work out how to do the most future forward wave energy, I would say within 6 months, just going on the group that I just had, within 6 months, you would have a plethora of great new R&D forward technologies in that area. But you can't expect to find everything you need in a region already. If you're talking moonshots, you're looking so far ahead, you're dreaming so far ahead, then you need to bring that technology to you and then develop it within your region. So I don't know why you would be hobbled by the lack of something already being there.
I'd like to build on that, and that within all our teams, when we created a vision for the future, we kind of backcast or retrocast back to today. And for all teams, we ended up, understanding workforce development and education, and the fact that 20 years, we need to start teaching the 10-year-olds about these new digital technologies, because they're the 30-year-olds in 2040 that will be designing, running, and building these businesses.
Thank you for that, Sally, and Robert as well. And Robert, you may introduce your next subgroup to make their moonshot presentation.
Great, thank you. And just really on that trend, we talked about truth, transparency, security, and really with this group, we got into the purpose of life and what it means to be happy. So with that, I'll introduce Anushka to share their vision.
Thank you, Robert. May I have the first slide? Yes, thank you. So one of the biggest lessons COVID-19 has taught us for every Caribbean country is that we need to diversify our economy and tap into the potential that technology is offering us. We are not yet capturing most of the benefits of technology available to us. In fact, we struggle with existing trade systems. Too many people are unbanked and have no access to digital infrastructure. Too many people are living in poverty and are struggling to keep jobs that are actually vanishing. There's limited access to education, jobs, funding, healthcare, and preventive healthcare is not even there yet. We are swamped with information that is not serving our needs and purpose in life. There's a flood of fake news, lack of transparency, and a lot of corruption. We are not harnessing the creative potential of our people. We have so many people pioneering in the creative industries and technologies, but they are not yet operating to a scale where they can make a difference and contribute towards the economy. So the challenge is to use technology to overcome our boundaries and limitations. In 2040, blurred reality, can I have the next slide? Sorry. In 2040, blurred reality becomes a thing. The access to technology is democratized. Imagine having a twin who can effectively solve problems for both of you, yourself and your digital version. Imagine everyone has such a twin who is an exact resemblance of yourself virtually. This virtual you is linked to the real-time information of yourself, your health, digital wallet, education level, virtual skills, and your emotions. Your medical tests are done on your digital versions before it's done on you. May I have the next slide? A crime scene is replayed or reconstructed by observing your digital twin's memory. We can extrapolate choices you make today to know how they will play out in the future by making your digital twin go fast forward. We experience new cities without physically traveling to them, but sending our digital twin, since the digital experience is already fulfilled with also taste, feelings, emotions, smell, and all that. Blurred reality is about the digital me, a bundle of information. It doesn't matter if you're in the real world or in the physical world. In order to get there, we need to embrace technology in ways that are transformational, safe, and secure, and also create an inclusive world. Financial inclusion, digital inclusion, social inclusion, and so on. We need to work on our digital literacy. Yes, from a very young age, but mostly for everyone in each and every corner of the Caribbean. We need policies and regulations. Use technology as an enabler of all the other sectors. Monetize the creative culture. We need to understand that human experience will change. Although policies are important, we need to realize that the future is about new structures and new ways. The definitions, as we know them, will change, and we need to realize that the system will be self-regulated and adaptable to future infrastructures. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka, for your presentation on blurred reality. Very exciting indeed. And Robert, I would invite you to please, if you may, invite the next subgroup to make their presentation, and we'll ask Anushka to answer any questions that may arise related to this moonshot in the Q&A function. Thanks, Robert.
Great, thank you, Golda. Finally, the third group, I'm very excited about the conversations we had just to really question the way things are made, supply chain, and the benefits of leveraging the abundance of the region. So with that, I'll introduce Stefan and Zariel to share Made in Water.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our pitch. Next slide. So the current pandemic has disrupted supply chain in the Caribbean. We know this for a fact. And additionally, the lack of robust 3D printing as well as automation technology in the region has led to reduced competitiveness of the region as well. So this has led to a reduced or lowered pace of trade in goods and services between the region and other countries. Next slide, please.
Thanks. So as Ariel mentioned, we have these basically issues. The trade infrastructure in the region is severely lacking. The payment infrastructure in the region is severely lacking. So what we end up with is the need to upgrade these, obviously. And the technology it already exists at this point, and the evolution of it will be rapid, such as blockchain for supply chain, settlement networks for payments, so that we don't have to send a wire to New York just to send one back to Jamaica. So, but on the supply chain route, you have these blockchain infrastructures that add authenticity, traceability, so that no matter, where it kind of proves, it provides provenance. So you know where things are going, you know where things are coming from, everything has a record of it, a digital record, and it can't be tampered with. So keeping this in mind, because this is a bit compounded, now we have, at this point in 2020, there exists underwater data centers, right? But some from Microsoft, IBM, companies like that, that are sustainable, efficient. In 2040, we have underwater laboratories so that people can travel to and basically go inside. And this will be mainly for research. This will be for builders, imagine, creators, architects, things, people like that use 3D printing for basically to build products. Now, keep in mind that we also have this blockchain-based supply chain network, especially within the region, but also externally, so that these things that are being built, especially in terms of automation, they can be easily traveled back and forth, easily shipped, easily recorded, so that there's a lot more digital accuracy and digital efficiency in terms of the tracking of these goods and the shipping of these goods. Now, to add to this, so it kind of greatly solves the issue of physical goods, physical shipping. What What about the digital goods? What about the orange economy, the creative economy, the artists, the filmmakers? Well, they have the internet right now, which is obviously good, but it's not immersive. So in 2040, think of the metaverse, these virtual worlds where you kind of connect to, not with VR headsets, but with full neural links. So you basically upload an avatar of yourself that you control, not with a controller or a joystick, you control with your thoughts. So, and just it's any kind of virtual world where you're kind of walking around, but you can also have galleries, you can also have studios where you don't have to go anywhere, people come to you. All these kind of virtual avatars controlled by people, they can come to your gallery, and you have these, you know, your digital art, your digital film, everything is we're fully embracing the digital sphere. And with the labs, it kind of provides these wonderful environments that also add to the marine ecosystem. So for example, you have, you know, the underwater statues are very popular right now, and those kind of add to, you know, they kind of reverse the coral bleaching that they add to the ecosystem so that fish and whatnot can kind of grow and thrive. And it adds so many things to, you know, the reversing the effect of climate change, obviously very slowly, but all these, and I know this is multiple things, but all of these things kind of coincide and intercorrelate to add so many things to our region at the same time for both people who are just trying to create digitally, trying to make things physically, adds to things like mariculture, aquaculture, and ends in a better version of the Caribbean. So that's the long and short of it.
Thank you, team. Nick, Robert, is there anything that you would like to add as we wrap up with this group?
Just before Mrs. Suarez answers, I'd like to add in terms of how do we get there, definitely we need to assess the feasibility, right? Yes, it might be a great idea, but at the end of the day, we have to assess the feasibility of the project, right? And we also have to determine the environmental, technological, social, political, and economical impact, right? We also have to engage the region, engage potential partners, suppliers, government, stakeholders, entrepreneurs, and the citizens, the Caribbean citizens in itself. We have to access funding, and then we commence the construction after everything has checked out and we're ready to go, we're ready to build and construct on the water. We begin construction and then we begin operation. So in 2040, the Caribbean should have its very own first underwater facility, production facility. So that's the vision. Thank you for listening, guys. Over to Mr. Suarez.
Yes, thank you. I personally look forward to products, services, movies, art, work that I can get in the future that are made in water from your region and beyond. So thank you all for that. I just want to comment that, you know, within our group, we had the luxury of being, you know, in digital transformation. So you can see how these things tie into the other ideas. You know, we need transportation future for all these things to exist. And they all certainly lead to continuing a tourism-based economy, but one that is equitable across multi-diverse economies. So thank you all. It was an honor to share this with you.
Thank you, Robert, for facilitating the Digital Transformation Group over the last 2 weeks. We do have a little bit of time left, and so I was hoping that we could answer 1 or 2 questions that I haven't seen answered via the Q&A function. Paul is asking a question to Ariel. Ariel was in the Reimagining Tourism group. Ariel, this is a fantastic concept. However, one of the issues within the Caribbean region is the lack of a consistent, efficient technology infrastructure. Have you considered this obstacle, and how could this impact the progress of the project? Ariel, if you're still with us, would you like to take a stab at that question, or perhaps we could even ask Nicholas his thoughts on this question from Paul?
I could probably take a little stab, and then Nick could probably jump in. Yeah, we know we are a bit behind time, and the idea of this initiative will be to partner us up with the experts and the people out there, globally that has the expertise to bring us up to speed. So yeah, we are behind time, but the purpose of all of this is to bring and go to get the support from the right people for these sorts of projects. So I think that's how we'll be able to up our game.
I think
Nicholas?
this relates very much to the point that Sally was making. With this digital transformation that's happening around the world, it's really a complete game changer in terms of our past positions of power and opportunity. With the digital transformation, any region, any country, any person can actually engage in this and leapfrog ahead of everyone else with the right vision, with the right networks, resources, and commitment. And it doesn't have to be, as Sally mentioned, necessarily in the region, but to be borrowing and bringing people from the region and bringing technology in the region, put it together in new ways and create new economies for the Caribbean. That's possible. And you see many examples actually in the world right now where countries are doing just that. So the opportunity is to the Caribbean right now to think with that mindset.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Nicholas. We have another question, and this one is for Nisa. Oh no, it's actually from Nisa to Ariel. How will you empower low-tech providers to receive the monies for their services? Example, if I'm the best lobster grill man in St. Lucia and I get the notification on the app to provide this for someone, how can I ensure I'll get my money, especially as a common Caribbean issue is not having a bank account? What is the solution? Have you thought about this, Ariel?
Yes, we did. The idea will be to partner with virtual wallets so we can navigate away from the bank. So for instance, there's a payment platform like WePay that we could probably partner with. That's just one option and an example where we could kind of navigate away from the bank accounts and have this own virtual system, that is a lot quicker, less fees, and it's a lot easier for the man on the street to receive the money. Essentially, in the long run, if there is a digital currency or some sort of currency for the entire region, that will be the ideal way for us to move forward with payment solutions. But that of course will come in time and with the existence of us developing that sort of thing.
Thank you, Ariel, for that response. And we have a question from Devika, who is asking, what is the business model for small businesses or locals to participate in the virtual reality twin? I believe that this is a question for Alistair's group. If not, please chime in and answer Devika's question if you have a response.
Wasn't my group directly, but I will definitely chime in. That's a very crucial piece for people to reimagine things. So essentially, technology is already in other places of the world, allowing that to happen through people's regular, what we call banger phones, right? So to the extent where, say in Nigeria or Ghana, like people can call a tractor, right, to use for a day with their regular banger phone. And these things are happening. So that it's purely a function of time and our interest. One concrete way to think of it is by ensuring that people can not only access communications technology, but also that we are reevaluating literal capital or value. So very quickly, right now we are obsessed too much with just financial capital as the only thing that you need to move in the world. But there's several others. And when we incorporate those into how we see an integrated system of communications or actually investment, then it opens streams for someone with 2 acres who has this wonderful skill to actually access a lot, because that is valued in a very different way from we do now.
Thank you, Alistair. And we have a general question from Carrie that I'd like to put to all of the future makers who've presented and others who haven't as well. What kind of political system and public sector ecosystems are envisioned by 2040 to support these awesome moonshots? What do you think the political system or public sector infrastructure is going to look like in order to support these big ideas? I invite any of you to chime in, open your mic and respond.
I would put a comment in there just because we all talked about it in each of our teams And I don't think we actually mentioned it in the presentation, but inherent to what the transport groups were talking about and the sustainable energy people was some sort of local visa that allows people to travel without hassle around the region, which obviously, however you govern, somehow that clicks in. But I think this idea of ease of travel and ease of passage through the various areas in the region is key to that.
I think for our group, especially for the Maiden Water, the discussion about ownership, borders in a digital and physical world were challenging question there. So I think, by pushing some of these boundaries, by doing things in maybe international waters, it does question that whole ecosystem and forces governance to adapt to the technology and the innovations that are coming up.
And jump in on that as well, like there's some specific areas. So one is the Caribbean has all thought for 50 years about integration. They've dithered and dathered. It needs to be done. Otherwise, we will die in our atomization, right? So the CSME would need to occur for real so that, yes, you do have that free movement of people as much as goods, right? So that integrated custom union, which is on the books and sitting, needs to happen. But it also means that we have to actually become more radically democratic. And by that, I mean using technology to enable fuller community level participation in decision making. Absolutely.
Zakir, I want to add something to that, and I agree. However, what I was also going to say is I think when I look at the Caribbean region as a whole, say compared to, I'll call it other developed nations and so on, if you look at just from a trade point of view already in terms of CARICOM and so on, and the movement of goods, there's a lot of infrastructure that's already in place that can actually make that happen. And I think when you look at the commonality of culture that we have, the opening remarks in terms of what the president of Ghana said, I think one of the things, even in all the groups that we have, is that there's much more commonality than we have differences. And yes, I think there has to be a pragmatic implementation of that integration, but I think the foundation is there for us to be able to actually create that.
I'm going to be as radical as Prime Minister Motley was allowed to be on the first day. She did the right thing by essentially calling out restrictive government leaders and the non-innovators. None of this is going to work until we have a vision and a buying from Caribbean leadership. There's no way to become, a regional powerhouse if the region doesn't have buy-in. So this is great, but we also need Caribbean leaders to do their own moonshotting, whatever that looks, empower CARICOM. I see, who is it, Alistair talked about, the CSME in a real tangible way. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm hoping that some people, in this, pivot event do eventually form, the part of the next government of their own islands, because it really is essential to have that transformative, radical thinking, and also coupled with what Richard Branson said, which sometimes you just have to power through this. So what? So what if you have these obstacles? So what if you have restrictive government? So I think if we find a way to find that happy medium between innovative governments and the power to say, so what, then I really think all of these moonshots can happen.
Thank you so much, Nisa, and to all of you who responded to those questions, and also to all of you who asked those questions. I think that call for a moonshot mindset on the part of all of our leaders is a really brilliant way to wrap up this segment of our conversation this morning. Thank you for your hard work over the last 2 weeks and for your time and dedication to launching these moonshots. And I know that the question is, so what next? What are we doing next? Well, from where we sit, we'll present these ideas in a manifesto document in the form of a comic book. We're really looking forward to that. It will document our journey over the last 2 weeks, developing these moonshots. We will also prepare a roadmap on steps needed to achieve these moonshots. Both should be ready by the end of the year, so you can look forward to that. Let's move on now to our closing thoughts as we wrap up this Manifesto of Moonshots event. Catalyzing change that brings about transformation has been the primary pursuit of Raquel Moses's career. Raquel has enabled leadership and organizations around the world to go beyond their current vision and stay on the cusp of what's next. She has become a critical advisor for driving the shift to digital, for process automation, and implementing key turnaround projects that heighten customer engagement and strengthen organizational performance. Please welcome to tie a bow on today's proceedings, CEO of the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator, Raquel Moses. Raquel, welcome.
Hi. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. So, I wanted to spend a moment. I want to start by just giving a hand of applause to, I think that's the thing I miss most in this digital era. We don't clap anymore because we're not all together, but I want to just give a round of applause to all of the presenters this morning, especially the people who presented the moonshots. I thought they were fabulous, some of them scary, but scary in the most wonderful way. So let's start with a hand of applause to those guys. Well done. The time that was spent was clearly evident, and the way that you are thinking absolutely underscores the talent that we have in this region. I want to reflect first on how far we've come. We started this, which I will refer to from here forward as the mere moment, where she, in 15 minutes, was able to encapsulate, to tie a bow and to provide a summary of the experience. What I hope that happens from this point forward is that when we look into the future, and we're talking about 2030, 2040, I'm thinking 30-30, 30-40. When we look at this moment, we say that this was the pivot point in history where the Caribbean began its momentum to take its rightful place in order to achieve its ultimate objective of world leadership. I think that there is something absolutely fantastic and phenomenal about what we are capable of. And that mere moment really helps to underline for us, listen, what we need, we already have. All we need is to just push forward. And so I'm hoping that this is a point of momentum. Everyone has in their stomach an ache, a pain, a desire, a passion, something that we know that we can do. And this is the time where you start listening to that ache and you say, okay, I hear you and I'm ready. I'm ready to take charge. I'm ready to step into my purpose. You all know the story of David and Goliath. And if you're a fan of Malcolm Gladwell, a son of the Caribbean, as I am, you would have read his book, what you realize is that Goliath had a natural disadvantage. And it was this thing that he thought was his advantage, his size. But his size made him clumsy and lacking nimbleness. We have that same advantage. We have phenomenal regional institutions. We have magnificent leaders. We have spectacular sportsmen. We have world-class artists in every sphere that we can understand. And what's funny to me, and as Nissa was talking about it, what's funny to me is that, and Alice as well is talking about CSME in a real way. And I'll tell you, I'm a child of CSME. I worked in Jamaica, and I'm from Trinidad. And so everything that we do and everything that we've done hasn't failed. We have a lot of things that are working. And what is amazing to me is that we are phenomenal storytellers. And for some reason, the good news, and Mia Motley mentioned it, she's like, they don't talk about it. They don't talk about the universal health care. They don't talk about the universal education. And that is because we need to realize who we are. And if we realize who we are, then we have the ability to tell the right stories. There are a number of, the OECS is a model of cooperation that others can take advantage of, but you don't talk about it. There are some phenomenal achievements at CARICOM level. And I will say it boldly, CARICOM doesn't move quickly enough, but they are not without magnificent merit. And again, but the stories don't get out. And when I was putting the list together, I started naming names of people with phenomenal achievements. And the struggle wasn't that there were too few, but it was that there were too many. And how do you start with, are you Bob Marley, Rihanna, Usain Bolt, Brian Lara, Sean Paul, and you just start, Mia Motley, and you start going down that list and you realize Maxine Williams, and, we have so many world-class people with talent, people with ideas, people who have accomplishments, Colin Powell, Kamala Harris, any sphere that you think about, Caribbean people have impacted. Alistair, you talked about the fact that there is Hello Green, where you can use an app to call a tractor in Ghana. Do you know it's a Trini who designed that app and has that going, who runs that business? I met him at MIT, and it's phenomenal, but people don't know. And so we have to get these stories out, because it is mind-blowing what we can achieve. It is absolutely mind-blowing. Our greatest struggle, and this is from one of my favorite quotes, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that frightens us. Who are we to be gorgeous, beautiful, talented, fabulous? But who are you not to be? We are already all of these things. The struggle that we are having is cognitive dissonance, because we know who we are deep down inside. We know that we are powerful and we are talented and we have limitless potential, but we are behaving in a way that does not support that. And we are playing small because we believe we are from a small place. And that is no longer an option. We now have to step in to our purpose. So I'll tell you, when we were doing the promotion for this event, I was on television with Michelle Kamal, who I'll call the brand architect of this event. And he talked about the grasshopper, if you put a grasshopper in a jar long enough, it'll realize that it'll stop jumping up. And even after you take the lid of the jar off, it will have learned that behavior of limiting its ability. And so when Michelle talked about that, I thought that was so absolutely powerful, because not only do we need to take the lid off the jar, but we need to now relearn how to jump. So before I fail miserably at the task that Golda has asked me to execute, and I will tell you why, I want to say a few thank yous. I want to say an amazing thank you to the partners. Singularity University, you've done a tremendous job. I want to say a great thank you to our judges. I want to say Destination Experience. When Kirk talked in the beginning about assert what the future will look like, that is exactly what we need to do right now in this moment. But what I loved was when Dr. Ali said, we are not trying to catch up. And Nicholas, when you talked about we need to leapfrog, the value that we have in what we haven't done is that we can see what others haven't done and then go ahead of them now. And we didn't have to make that investment. Great, we can see what others have done, and then we say, great, we know what doesn't work, and now we can focus on what does work and make that work for us, using our advantage, using our size as our advantage. I also want to thank the judges who judged the innovations, our entrepreneurs, the people who attended the event, and I especially have to say a huge thank you to Golda, who I don't think you guys have any idea the level of work that she has put into this event. Sasha, who you've not seen, Sasha, please, after this, take a nap, and Diane, who has been tremendous and amazing, and Chris and Pip and all of the people who lent their support to getting the word out, because they realize the power in this moment. So the reason that I'm saying that I'm going to fail at the mission that Golda has asked me to execute is that I am not closing anything. I'm not closing any jar. I'm not closing any event. I'm not closing a thing. This is the start. This is the beginning. This is the point from which we move. We have been on the platform and we are boarding a rocket ship. So it is not that we are closing anything. This event kicked off on my birthday, and it was the best birthday present I've ever received. And now we have been in a state of preparation. We are getting onto this rocket. There is something that you know you need to do. I want you to write it down. I want you to put it on your bedside table. I want you to read it every night. And every morning, I want you to get up and get at it, because it is not going to take one of us making that moonshot. It is going to take all of us making our moonshot. Do not be frightened of it. It is not your darkness, but your light that frightens you. And it is okay to be frightened. Do it anyway. This is the point from which historians will look back on us, the mere moments, the pivot movement, the movement that started here and started now. So I'm not closing, but I'm saying, let's go. Let's get at it.